Welcome to the Big Getaway Podcast, episode number 5. We launch in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. I'm the Mayor Gary Boylan here with Stephen Brooks, MLL All-Star.
Easy. What's going on, Gary?
All right, guys, so another great week of lacrosse. Don't know where to begin. I think you have an idea, though. We were talking a little bit before we started rolling.
I think the Army-Navy was definitely the big game of the week. The overall rivalry goes, Navy is up 60-35-3. And watching the game this weekend, seeing the stands being very packed and the heritage of these two schools literally battling one another in all sports. This is like their Super Bowl all season. Army jumped up on them in an early lead, continued the lead, and then Navy came back and tied it up in the fourth quarter. They were down at least 2 or 3 goals, came back, tied it up, and just closed it out, which is pretty good on Navy's standpoint, seeing that Army's ranked number 11 and Navy's unranked, but that just shows the type of passion that they have for this type of rivalry, that no matter when and where, they're never counted out.
Oh, they're the best. And when you see them celebrate afterwards, you said it before we started rolling, it's one of those games where you circle it on your calendar. This week was also Michigan against Ohio State, and when they play in the Horseshoe or they play in the Big House and they get jacked up. It's one of the newer rivalries in lacrosse. But the school is one of those traditional hotbed rivalries, and Navy against Army, Air Force is mixed in there, and you have the academies that are starting to fight for the Commander-in-Chief's Trophy, I think it's called. But when you see Navy and Army playing any year, any time, when they mix it up, it's going to be a battle. Like you said, the fans are coming out. The celebration after the game is a great comeback win, but just seeing the passion that drives it, they could be 0-10 or they could both be 10-0, and it's the same reaction.
No matter what, when you play Army or Navy, you got to play your best, because they're going to give it their best every single solitary time they have an opportunity to get on the field.
So I think that was the best matchup just on name alone. I'm going to go ahead and say the best game was that Maryland-Rutgers game. Just an absolute barn burner.
Easter Sunday,
13-12, triple overtime win for Maryland. Both teams had chances to win it in regulation. Both teams had chances to win it in the first and second overtime. It's one of those games where you're just on the edge of your seat. It doesn't matter who you're rooting for. And Maryland pulling out 2 close games in 1 week. They snuck by a number 5 Albany. Connor Fields just having an absolutely
lights out. 3-5.
That kid, it's one of those things when we talk about the Thompsons or some of these creative players, Matthews from a few years ago out in Denver. Sometimes they make these plays, whether it's a bounce pass or, UVA last weekend, phenomenal bounce pass.
Williams.
Zed is just, he's got those hands. But Connor, whether it's an over-the-shoulder, behind-the-back pass to the crease for a cutter, you're never kind of expecting what's going to happen, and it's fun to watch that kind of game. I saw a highlight online, I think it was YouTube, and somebody wrote on there, if everyone played lacrosse like this, it would be the number 1 sport in America. It's hard to disagree when just lightning in a bottle.
Well, that's the best thing about the purity of our sport, is that no matter what, lacrosse players come in all shapes and sizes, really. Short and quick, big and strong, average size, quickness, strength. These are types of things that make lacrosse a great sport. But when you tie in a skill set, knowing that Connor Fields is probably 5'11", 6 feet, probably weighs 180 to 90 pounds, and watching him display his body control up against a defender where he doesn't need a draw slide because he's just slow playing that guy because he's not beating him fair or square. And he gives himself the time to scan the field and figure out where he is, and then he gets to think about his next play. All right, am I looking off ball? What's going on? All right, I know that everybody's vacated off ball. I can now roll off and attack the goal, and I know exactly where I need to go. That skill set, that speaks volumes about what Lyle was able to do with Connor Fields and playing with him. And Connor Fields is obviously taking that stint of a skill cell to excel himself, but it's just amazing to see that type of skill set displayed at that high of a level. It's unbelievable.
You know what I was always told as a young player coming up in a non-traditional hotbed, and everyone's always like, how can I play like, Gary Gator? How can I play like, whoever it may be? And I'm a chubby, not me personally, but 6'3", 190-pound specimen myself.
I used to be chubby.
But when you're a little kid and you're chubby, or maybe you're tall and lanky and you don't look like the superstars you're watching, how can I be like them? And I think coaches will always tell you a good stick is a great equalizer. If you have an absolute surefire sniper stick and you're hitting the wall constantly, and you can just drop dimes of passes, coaches will throw you to X. They'll figure out a way to get you on the field. Or if you have a cannon of a shot, they'll throw you out on a wing on man up. There's always a place for you on the field if you dial that stick in, and that's the one fun thing about lacrosse. You don't have to run a 4-3 and be 6'4" to get on the field.
And at the same time, become the smartest player on the field.
Yeah, study. So this week's top 10. Why don't you give us a little breakdown there, Brooks?
All right, I love seeing this one. Of course, number 1 is Syracuse, coming off another yet overtime win against North Carolina.
Cardiac Kids.
Maryland just came off a fabulous 3 games in 8 days, I believe they went on. That was a tough one. They were Albany, Rutgers, and then they had Penn State. And then to finalize the top 5, you got Denver.
Coach Tierney.
Oh, yeah.
Episode number 4.
Hey, Coach, listen up on that. Duke and Albany at number 5. Now, Duke is always a surprise that most people say, oh, they lost a lot of early games.
Where did they come from?
It's like we said in episode 1 and even in episode 2, Coach Janowski knows exactly what he's doing. He's a player's coach, and he gets these guys to figure out what their roles are, and he can put those pieces on the field, and they all work simultaneously. It's really cool to see that he doesn't freak out early in the season. He lets adversity make his team a strong push towards the end.
I love it. And then you round out the top 10. We have a couple non-traditional powers. You have Notre Dame, obviously, number 6 is traditional power, but Ohio State, and then Hopkins, and then Penn State and Hofstra. So Hofstra lost a really tough one to Drexel. Up a handful of goals in the second half, kind of let it slow bleed. It was a tough one, but Coach Seth Tierney is going to get those guys cooking. I think he's one of those guys that he's a buy-in, that game's in the past, move on to the next one type coach. I don't think he'll beat them up too much over that loss, but maybe they needed it. Bring it back down to earth a little bit. Sometimes it's nice to have a loss. An unblemished record going into the tournament is a real weight to carry, and being the only team that was undefeated going into last week, maybe it caught up to them. So get that one off your back, and here we go. I think they're going to be a dangerous team. I wouldn't want to see them in May.
The pressure of the undefeated season is officially over. I mean, dealing with adversity at this time could be a good thing for them to get them back, like you said, to the ground level and continue their climb.
So the women's game, this episode, guys, we have an incredible guest, Taylor Cummings, 3-time Tewaaraton winner. I'm sure you guys saw that in the title before you clicked it. But, this week we want to talk a little bit, break down the women's top 10. Again, we are not experts in the women's game. We just love watching it.
Just learning.
Just learning. We like watching it on TV. We love watching the highlights. But for those of you that are fans, break down the top 10 a little bit. Maryland, shockingly, in first place with a 15-0 record, getting all the number 1 votes. Followed by some non-traditional areas for men. So Florida in second, Stony Brook in third, North Carolina in fourth, and then you followed by Penn State, Southern California, Princeton, Syracuse, Colorado, and Penn. So some traditional places for men, some non-traditional places. The Southern California, I think men have really, really been pushing to get into the California market, and you see them kind of making their way out there. They had an MLL team for a little bit. There's some good D2 teams, some good D3 teams. They're making the club teams. Obviously, the clubs are great out there, and the boys club teams are great. But I love seeing teams that are in the traditional areas popping up on top 15, top 20 lists.
Southern California is what attracts my eye because.
They're 10 years old? I mean, it's really not that old of a program.
Yeah, they're very, very successful. I mean, just imagine if Southern California had a men's program.
Oh.
I mean, think about the culture of where the school is located, right? I mean, Syracuse and all these other schools like Maryland and Virginia and Johns Hopkins, they all have these great universities that are established about their sport. But then all of a sudden, if you were a teenage kid being like, oh, I can go up to, Maryland or some school in New York and freeze, or I can go to Southern California and enjoy my time and have great weather. I mean, I think that could potentially change the whole recruiting aspect to where people want to go to school. That's awesome for them.
Look at the teams that are also getting votes. So you have Louisville. It's a pretty good women's program. But Louisville, you have Louisville. You have Elon, which is another Southern school. Virginia Tech. I mean, Virginia Tech's a top 20 program. Another great sports school, and they're succeeding. And this is we'll dive into this a little bit later in some of our other episodes. But as the sport continues to grow, why not add a program? I know it can be tough financially, but some of these bigger schools with these huge sports budget, you talk about SEC schools, some of these Big 12 schools, Colorado here has a women's program, and they're ranked, like we said, they're number 9. But you start adding these schools, and one by one they start dropping, and look out. I mean, this sport is primed to explode. So those of you that are listening, appreciate it. You're in the ground floor. I think this sport, in the next 10, 15 years, people have been saying, but I really start to see movement. I mean, I think it's really going to take off here. I think you may be one of the old leather helmets here for the football fans. You might be one of the old goats from back in the day in 20, 30 years when our kids are playing.
I mean, the biggest thing we all want to see is this sport grow. As we've established before, lacrosse is such a tight market, and we play in this game because we love it. And at the same time, at the end goal is to make sure that we can make this a popular sport, just like football and basketball is. And I truly see that in the future. We just hope we can continue to push it in the right way and get it in front of the right people.
So along that same vein, this week there's some news that we've been expecting as high school coaches and club coaches for a long time now. I think it's been about 4 or 5 years, and this has really taken off. But the early recruiting, for those of you that aren't familiar, a lot of kids have been committing verbally. You can't sign until your senior year, but verbally committing to universities and colleges at 14 years old. So that means the academies committing to Navy, committing to Army, committing to Syracuse, Maryland, Hopkins. And the last few years, they've been committing to some of the non-traditional powers, because once those top kids go off, the other coaches scramble for the other Division I talent. And you find that there's some kids that may be 16 years old developing that are Division I players that no longer have places to go. And you see players like Trevor Baptiste, who's a D3 commit, who is now arguably the most valuable player in college lacrosse. He was a D3 commit until when was maybe his senior year summer, or going into his senior summer. So it's incredible. So they decided this week that no more. They're going to now, I think it becomes official here relatively soon. I don't know if it takes place this summer, but September 1st is going to be, of your junior year, is going to be the first time college coaches can approach you. So I love it. We've had some kids that have committed, and it's quite some pressure. I mean, when you commit to a top-tier program at 14 years old and you have that on your back, every tournament you go to, every game that you play in, you're a D1 commit, and you have to play to that level. And when you're growing and expanding, your game, to carry that on your back as a college player at 14 is way too intense.
Well, Coach Tierney said it best in episode 4, is that, early recruiting is almost like a trap. These kids are doing, so much. They're playing 6 summer tournaments, and they're doing so much, and they're having so much pressure on being recruited so early that when they get recruited, sometimes they're just like saying, okay, I'm recruited, I know where I'm going, I'm comfortable, I can just get through this, and then I can go to my college, wherever I'm going to play. But, it's really good that it's changed, because putting that pressure on a 14-year-old kid about where to commit to school, and the kid, I mean, some kids are recruited before they even step foot on the varsity field as a freshman. I mean, that's just bizarre to think about. When I was playing, I was lucky enough to be able to play the game or make varsity. It's just crazy, but I'm glad it got moved, because now you're getting recruits to when players are truly developed, because those kids were getting not the looks that they're supposed to be looking, and they eventually go down to a Division II or Division III or lower Division I school because they're such late bloomers, and then all the schools are already filled. So you saw the parity of the game. We're hoping that it grows in the way of these non-traditional schools are starting to climb the ladder, not because of the effect of the recruiting, but the effect of being able to get these kids at the right age, and that will hopefully continue to spread the game. Because if you're looking at a list of 25 players, and those 25 players are all juniors, you're going to think to yourself, now what skill set can they bring to the table that's going to make them better than the next guy? And it's just good to see that they can finally wait till they're about 16, 17 years old before they make that decision.
I think that's exactly what's going to happen. So you get a kid, and everybody knows a few that are 14 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old, whatever it may be, 6'1", 180 pounds, and it's like, wow, that kid is an absolute stud. It's like, is he a stud? Does he just have bigger size? And does he have a really good skill set for his age? And then you start to see him develop, and other kids start to hit the weight room, and they start growing, and their IQ develops. Well, that kid's committed to, whatever top 5 program, and everyone else starts to catch up to him a little bit, and this kid's skill set flattens out, and maybe he doesn't have that love for the game, but he just loved being a good player at 13, 14 years old. And now little Johnny from down the street that was 5'2" is now a 6-footer and has a cannon from the outside, and he's going to go to a smaller D3 school because there's no spots left. So I'm excited. It gives coaches an extra 2 years to look at the player, watch him develop, and then really go after him. And, it's the NCAA, so let's be honest. Coaches are going to kind of wink, wink, nod, nod, like, hey, point to my shirt. I think you should come to my school. But I do think that this is better for the game, that those verbals are now taken off the table and there's no offers. So I'm excited to see what happens. I think it's going to help the D2 and D3 levels as well, because now people are going to not know where to go. It's going to be a mad dash junior year, but there's going to be plenty of talent and plenty of kids really striving to develop to get to that D1 level.
Keep kids hungrier for a longer period of time, and hopefully they strive for success.
Yeah, I love it. So this week, guys, we have Taylor Cummings coming on. We're going to give you her bio here in a second. She's obviously one of the best lacrosse players in the world, male or female. One of those players that really did strive for success. I think she was like a 3 or 4 sport athlete. We're gonna ask her all those questions when we get into it. Sponsor break.
Hey, Tommy, you got any lacrosse balls?
No, I threw all of them in Mrs. Smith's yard.
Yeah, right. You couldn't even hit the broadside of a barn.
Hey, lay off, Buckwith Westminster IV. My mom's going to laxworld.com and using code BAGPOD, BAGPOD, and she's going to buy me a whole case.
And then I can use them.
Better not lose them. Code BAGPOD, BAGPOD, laxworld.com for free shipping, no minimums.
We're here with Taylor Cummings from the University of Maryland, who just recently graduated. In college, she was a 3-time Tewaaraton winner, 4-time first-team All-American, 2-time national champ, 2-time MVP, and a 3-time midfielder of the year.
Just like you.
Oh, wow.
One for you too, Brooks. One for you too. So between the three of us, we have 4. That joke's not as funny the second time. This is the second time that we recorded that. But we can all laugh and pretend it was pretty good.
That's funny. It was funny.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Brooks, go ahead.
Let's jump right into this. Taylor, I see your father was a college athlete in soccer, and I see that you played 3 sports in high school. What was the main focus on sticking to lacrosse and not trying to focus on any other sport that you played in high school?
So I think for me, what was the biggest thing was just time. As an 8th grader, I was on 6 or 7 different teams for soccer, basketball, and lacrosse collectively. So I was essentially on like a travel team and the version of like an AAU team for each of my 3 sports. And my poor mother finally around 8th grade was like, you need to choose. I can't drive you around anymore. And especially with high school coming up, I knew I had to kind of figure out which one I wanted to be serious with in terms of doing anything after school. So I still played soccer, basketball, and lacrosse throughout high school. But when it came down to kind of making that decision to what I was going to play after school, lacrosse was just a really easy fit for me. I loved the game. As a 7th or 8th grader, I was getting much better as a player. So I was enjoying that aspect of finally getting good. I'd struggled for my first couple years. But I think the biggest thing for me of why I wanted to play so much was because I loved the people I was with. I loved my teammates. I loved my coaches, and I think that made it a really easy decision for me to want to stick to lacrosse. So that's basically why I stuck to it, and looking back, I'm happy I made that decision as an 8th grader. So that's basically it. Just time and loving who I was with.
Wow, that sounds great. Who are your inspirations in the game? I mean, who are the ones that really pushed you to be successful? And I mean, playing 3 sports, it sounds like you had a lot on your hands with probably driving from practice to practice right after school, being busy on weekends. Who inspired you to continue to play any sport, and who are your role models?
My parents definitely inspired me to not only start playing but to keep playing. My mom was an athlete in high school, and then my dad played soccer at William and Mary. So sports were kind of just a natural path in our family. We played all the time. I watched my dad outside playing basketball with the neighborhood dads. ESPN was always on in our house, so sports was kind of inundated in my brain at a young age. And then once I could start to play, I wanted to spend time with my dad. He was always out in the back, kicking the soccer ball with me, playing basketball. And what I'm really thankful for my parents for is they never made me do anything. They never pushed me to play at the highest level. That's something that they kind of wanted me to develop on my own. And that backyard time with my parents and hanging out with my dad in the backyard, and then once my sister was able to play, doing that really helped me kind of develop a sense for the game and a love for sports in general. But I think my parents are definitely the people that have continued to push me and support me throughout my career.
Well, you were pretty busy when you were young, played in college, all these championships. Now you get out, which you should be able to relax. And if I get this correct, you're now sponsored by Under Armour. You have a YouTube channel that you're doing. You have clinics that you're doing. You have a clothing line. What else do you have up your sleeve? What's next? I feel like you have 1,000 things going on.
Yeah, I am all over the place right now. I thought I gave myself like a month after school, after I graduated, to kind of take some time and not only relax, but to figure out sort of my next move. And for me, my first thing was figuring out what I was going to do to actually make money. So
been there.
That's probably was step one. But for me, my dad had always been like, you should start your own business. Like, why don't you try it? And for the longest time, I just didn't want to do that. And then I got out and was like, okay, I'll start it. So I started my own business in June, focused on camps and clinics. And a big part of that is traveling across the country to not only the hotbeds like Maryland and New York, but also like Minnesota and Michigan and Florida and different places where the game is still growing, but isn't necessarily caught up to the East Coast. So I do that. That's basically my job, like the one that I can somewhat rely upon. But then the other aspect was signing with Under Armour, which was super exciting. That's something that happened towards the end of like the summer when that deal finally was made. But signing with Under Armour was a really easy choice in terms of who I wanted to be sponsored by. They're right in Maryland. I went to McDonough, which was an Under Armour sponsored school. I went to Maryland, where Under Armour was founded, and then I live in Baltimore, which is where Under Armour's headquarters are. So it was a really easy decision to kind of sign with them. So I do a lot down there in terms of they help me out with my business quite a bit, but in terms of like helping me figure out who I should get my shirt screen printed by, how to deal with my wholesale account, things like that. But I'm also down there a lot, giving my input on the lacrosse side, working out down there. So that's kind of like a full-time job in itself, but it's really fun. And then I get to go to US, I get to play on the summer. So I'm busy, but I like to be busy, so I'm happy.
Good busy. Well, you're such a role model for all these young girls. What kind of responsibility is that? Is that something that's always in the back of your mind?
Oh, absolutely. I think it took me a while, especially when I was like a freshman and sophomore at Maryland, to realize that we are role models. I think we just don't necessarily think of ourselves like that initially. I never, for my first year or two, didn't understand why so many girls stood outside of our locker room wanting signatures. Like, to everyone and to ourselves, like, we're just all normal people. But to little girls, we're the players they look up to. And once I kind of figured that out for myself, I took it as such a responsibility. We have an opportunity to not only show them like what the standard of lacrosse is in terms of how it should be played and how amazing you can be at a sport, but also like our on-field and off-field behavior, like making sure that we are super respectful of our opponents, that we are not yelling at refs, that we are gracious winners and gracious losers, and that we are respectful to everyone that we see. So I think that is where I and then all the U.S. players, all of these collegiate players do a really good job of realizing that we're setting the standard for the next generation, and what we do impacts them whether we think it does or not.
So leading into that, what kind of advice to young girls that are trying to emulate you, what kind of advice would you give to them?
I think the biggest thing I can say is to work your butt off and make sure you're still having fun. This early recruiting rule really gets, because you have set 8th graders who are worried about being recruited starting in 6th grade, and they can't even enjoy their time. They can't even enjoy playing because there's so much pressure to be recruited. So I would just say to make sure that when you look at yourself at the end of the day, that you're still enjoying it and having fun and remembering why you play. And just to make sure to remember that there's someone right next to you who's working twice as hard. So if playing at a high level is what you want, then you got to work your butt off for it.
Right. It's important to let these kids, both boys and girls, know that this is a sport that's supposed to give you an opportunity to step away from all the stresses that they have in their lives and the ability to have fun, and just know that it's not a job. It's just to go out there, and hopefully somebody will be out there to pick you up, or somebody will be out there to recruit you, and just to continue to have that success and of having fun.
Well,
exactly.
if people are looking for some drills or something to do on their own, your YouTube channel, you got all that, the wall ball and different things you have for, on the field and things you can do by yourself. I watched the beef shooting video. I feel like I can shoot pretty well now. That wall ball in your backyard is awesome too. We were pretty jealous. So what are some things other than what you have on your website? What's your favorite drill away from kind of the media that you do on your own to kind of better yourself or continue to grow as a player?
So for me, I think the biggest part that I've honestly struggled with a little bit now that I'm retired is how to continue to get better at the draw. I don't every day have someone who I can go out to the field and ask them to play like a dummy center on me. So I've started to do a lot where I will like fake a draw and like post up next to either a goal post or something hard and have them be sort of my stick that I can then sort of draw off of. Doing a lot of stuff like quick hands, quick wrists in terms of like getting a big bucket of rice and digging your hands in, working on that wrist strength. But that's sort of been the biggest thing that I've been working on this season in preparation for World Cup is just making sure that those wrists are strong and quick. And one way to easily do it is to kind of do the draw on your own. It's just something that everyone can do because all you need is essentially a post that you can pin the ball up next to.
That's awesome. Now that the women's game has turned professionally, I think last year was, I believe, the first official year for professional women's lacrosse. And, watching these clips on Instagram and Twitter, you're seeing a lot more skill in the women's game like you would see in the men's game as well. Behind the backs, people shooting between the legs and scoring goals. There's more skill in the dodging as well. Where do you see the women's game going, at this moment right now?
I mean, I think you're seeing constantly how creative and fast-paced and just exciting women's lacrosse is to watch. I think getting ourselves on TV more with the Big Ten Network and ESPN, I think we're making the great and necessary steps to just getting lacrosse out there more, and getting people to see what we've kind of been doing all along. I've watched Kayla Trainer for 4 years do those behind the backs and around the worlds and through her legs, and she's completely amazing at it. But only in the past year or so have people actually been able to get video clips of it because it hasn't been on TV. So I think that sort of the next step is just kind of getting women's lacrosse like on the forefront of TV production, computer streamed games, just making sure that, they can see all these amazing things and what people can do, because that's sort of the next step is just continuing to grow it that way.
Do you think the helmets are definitely imminent? I know Florida, right, has approved the helmet law. Is that something everyone's going to do, or do you think it's just kind of a test that they may back away from?
I mean, most people don't realize how physical the
incredible.
women's game actually is.
Yeah.
I mean, when you see the arms of you guys, you have bruises all up and down your arms, and people watching the game would never have think of the physicality side is that big. But now that it's becoming more physical,
bigger, faster, stronger
with the helmet rule. How do you feel about that?
I'm personally someone who doesn't believe that helmets should be fully mandatory. I think you're going to change the game completely, and at that point, if you're going to put us in helmets, put us in pads and make us play like men. I've read so many studies that show that sports with helmets actually create more concussions. So I think you're kind of getting away from the beauty of women's lacrosse that's fast-paced. It is aggressive, but not completely aggressive like men's lacrosse or football. So I personally think they're a great option for kids who have concussions, whose parents are worried about getting hit in the head. I think it's always great to have an option, but I don't think it should be mandatory, because I think the game is going to stray in a direction where it's no longer going to be women's lacrosse.
It's kind of like in hockey. When hockey first started to implement helmets, players actually had a choice to whether or not they would like to wear it until it became mandated that guys had to wear helmets. But that's similar to what the women's game is turning to. You should allow players to have the opportunity to make that choice and then move forward.
So talk to us a little bit about your clinics. We were watching some of the stuff online and checking out some of the Instagram. Why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the dates you have coming up and what you guys do?
So my dates pretty much, I'm not starting up again fully until June. Girls are in season right now, so a lot of their weekend time is taken over by their club teams and their travel teams. But I have a couple clinics set up before I leave for World Cup. I'll be going out to Kansas City, Missouri, which I've never been to. I'm going down to Richmond. I'm going to Connecticut. And I'm actually spending the 12th through 14th of June in Houston, Texas, with a bunch of people doing a bunch of different clinics, which will be fun. But basically, my clinics, I'm someone who's a firm believer in sort of starting from the ground up. So starting with the very basic fundamentals of hand placement on your stick and simple catching and throwing, and then going through whether you're in the younger group and you're going through cradling, or the older group and you're going through stick protection. Then we'll sort of transition on into offensive schemes and defensive things, and ending up with some transition, man up, man down. But I like to start at the very basic and work my way up. And I think I found that if you layer skills upon each other in these clinics in these short times, that's sort of the best way to get girls to kind of recognize what's going on. So that's kind of how I've been running it. My goal with these clinics, honestly, given the environment that kids play in, which is super stressful, and recruiting at age 10, I always say at the beginning of my clinics, this is 2 or 3 hours of pure freedom. I don't control where they play. I don't control what position they play, how many minutes they get, whether they're getting recruited or not. I have absolutely no stake in that. I just want them to have fun, to learn something in a stress-free environment, and to kind of remember why they like to play.
And they're affordable, too. I feel like a lot of people, and it's Taylor Cummings, $600 for the weekend. It's you're making them actually affordable. I feel like a lot of the guys' game is a money grab. I feel like you're trying to legitimately grow the game, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a business and I want to obviously make enough to support myself, but I also realize how expensive the sport of lacrosse is. And I really want to make sure that people get their money's worth when they come to something like mine. So if it's smaller groups, it's going to be a little more expensive because you're getting a little more one-on-one time. But
Yeah.
I would never price something with like 70, 80 kids at an extreme price just because they're not getting that attention that they necessarily deserve. And I just want to make sure that kids of all skill levels, of all needs, are able to come to these clinics and have fun and learn and just get like 2 or 3 hours where they just don't have to necessarily worry about anything other than playing and enjoying themselves.
I mean, the important aspect of it is just help grow the game. I mean, that goes for both boys and girls. I mean, the game is still so rich to everybody's eyes and the way they see it. And it's just everybody's like, oh, what is this sport with a racket at the end of it? I mean, the biggest thing is just to allow these young athletes to give them a pedestal to continue to climb and just learn the fundamental aspects and have fun while playing it.
Exactly. That's just like my ultimate goal. And I would love it ultimately to turn into something where a girl from Oregon has the same skill set and has the same playing ability as a girl from Maryland, has the same coaching ability. Like, that's kind of my goal, is just to make sure, like, I would love for there to be no discretion between the East Coast and the West Coast at some point.
Well,
That's how,
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I was gonna say, speaking of all these lessons and the clinics, what do you charge your sister for lessons? She's currently playing at Maryland. For those of you guys that don't know, she's pretty good, but
nothing. Sometimes Kelsey will come home and ask, because she does the draw a lot, so sometimes she'll come out and ask just if I can go out and work with her on the draw, and that's always fun. We grew up kind of messing around with each other in the backyard, and I think she does a great job at it, and she also helps me out because when she's home, I can go mess around and try some things too. So she's free. I don't charge her anything.
That's nice. A little Starbucks maybe here or there.
Yeah.
Now, going back to your college days, Kathy Reese, the head coach for the University of Maryland's husband, Brian Reese, is actually a coach in the MLL as well, who I was able to play for and got to know.
Nice.
Now, what kind of impact did Kathy Reese have on you?
Oh, Kathy is awesome. She's one of my favorite coaches. I think I learned so much from her. I could go on for hours. But I think Kathy did a really great job with me, especially someone who, as a freshman, kind of struggled a little bit in terms of my confidence. I walked on the field and you had reigning Tewaaraton Award winner Katie Schwartzman. You had Alex Oss, Attacker of the Year. You had Defender of the Year. You had a stacked team. And my freshman year, she really kind of took me under her belt and just made me confident enough to realize that I deserved to be out there, and that I was good, and that if I just played confidently, that I could really make something of myself. And then throughout the years, as sort of my roles on the team changed, she was great at knowing when to be hard on me, when to know I needed a little pat on the back, and she was my mom through those 4 years, and my mom away from home. There are times where there's a lot of pressure on us and a lot of pressure on me, and she always knew the balance of when to be hard on us, when to be hard on me, and then when to let us have fun. But I think the greatest thing I learned from her is that 4 years are going to go fast, and you're going to look back and you're not going to remember a failed test or a missed class or even a loss or a win. Or a goal. You're gonna remember the friendships you made, the memories you made, the times you had, and those are more important than anything else.
Wow, well said.
One last question, and we can fire around, and we can put you on the hot seat. But
Okay.
What most people don't realize, I play professionally, and the travel schedule is kind of hectic. We aren't able to, some of us aren't able to live in the cities that we play for. And our travel schedule is, for instance, I would have to fly out Friday afternoon. We have a walkthrough practice on Friday night, wake up Saturday morning, have another walkthrough, have a little downtime to take nap, go to lunch, and then we go right into our game. And then we're first flight out on Sunday morning. I'm trying to get home as quickly as I can. What's the travel schedule like for the women's game? Professionally.
So the professional league is a little different. We a lot of the games are actually on the East Coast, so we don't have to worry so much about flying. At least I'm lucky enough that I don't have to worry about flying as much. A lot of them are based out of Boston, just because that's where the headquarters are for the UWLX. But the main goal with sort of these UWLX games, because we have so many coaches, college coaches who are on the teams, they try to follow like the biggest recruiting tournaments so that the coaches can go play their game and then go recruit. They're trying to make it as simple and as easy for these college coaches as possible, because they still want them to play. They just want to make sure that we're in places where it's easily accessible to them. So basically, from World Cup players aren't allowed to play this summer because of obviously the World Cup coming up. But the season for everyone else starts the weekend after Memorial Day weekend and ends the championships in Placid the first weekend of August. So we're just like the MLL, where you're traveling every weekend, whether you're driving or flying, and trying to get home as quickly as possible before the workday starts on Monday.
So with the USA team, I mean, obviously I've never had the privilege of wearing the USA jersey. That must be something that it's 2014 you became a member of Team USA?
I became a member my sophomore year. So that year was the year after World Cup. They had the World Cup in Canada the summer before my sophomore year. So they didn't have tryouts that year. And they asked, Ricky Freed asked Alex Ost, me, Kayla Trainer, and Taylor Trimble to just kind of fill in those roster spots for people who had retired. And then from then on, I was on the team.
So what does that feel like? I mean, that must be a special honor.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like the most humbling experience to kind of wear USA across your chest. And I don't think we kind of realize it in the moment of that we're on the national team. But I think it's always something really, really special when the national anthem plays, like especially when we were in England this past summer, like the national anthem played, and that's when I kind of realized, like, oh my God, we are actually playing for our country. Like, we're on foreign soil. We're the only Americans here, and we're the people representing our nation. And I think that was a really surreal moment for me, and one that kind of made me step back and realize just how lucky we all are to wear that uniform and represent something so much bigger than ourselves.
That's pretty cool. With your teammates being college coaches, they kind of needling you to get into the college game. Do you have aspirations to coach in college?
I had a couple offers this summer in terms of college. I wanted to kind of figure out my business before I even considered that. Just with all the NCAA rules, there was no way that and just time.
Right,
there was no way I would be able to kind of do both. So I'm definitely haven't. This is my first season out of a college sort of lifestyle and seeing the college lacrosse every day, and I definitely miss it. So at first I was a hard no in terms of college coaching. Now I'm sort of considering it. Like if the right opportunity came, like if ever there is a spot at Maryland for like an assistant coach, I would happily jump on that. But I think Caitlin and Kenneth are going to be around a while, and so is Kathy. They do an amazing job. So Maryland's really the only place I would consider at the moment. But we'll see. I don't know. I don't like to look too far ahead.
Yeah, no, I gotcha. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff. So we got a fire round. So we asked a couple of the local high school teams to have their girls give us some questions. So these range from serious to pretty comical. So we picked 5 or 6.
Okay.
So first one, what is your pregame ritual?
So it's a little different now that I'm out of college, but I'll just go based off in college. Pregame ritual, we would go to a place called Bagel Place. I would order a wheat bagel toasted with peanut butter and jelly. I would go to the training room afterward, get treatment done. I would use the Normatec things, which are like the big blow-up robot legs, essentially.
Huge believer in those.
Yeah, I love those. and then I would put my uniform on the same way. Same person did my hair, and then it was go time.
What is your favorite song to pump you up?
I love Kill the Lights. That's a great one. I love that song. That's one that my high school friends listen to, or my old high school friends and I love to listen to, and our team really liked that song too.
So you talked about what you usually eat before a game. They want to also know what's the worst thing that you've ever eaten before a game.
Oh.
It's an interesting question. I'm not really sure. I could think of one for myself.
Like not really in college, but like in high school, like before club games, I would eat Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, whatever my mom could find. So yeah, I've eaten like fried foods before. Absolutely. I'm a little bit better about what I eat.
This is one of my favorite questions we got. Kristen from Fairfax asked if you'll be her best friend.
Surely, absolutely. Just don't make me drive to Fairfax.
All right, and one of the I guess this will be our last one. They want to know what your favorite color is, and if you try to use that for your gear. If you try to use the same color for your gear.
No, my favorite color is green. Green's kind of a tough one to put on gear, so I just let my phone case is green, so that's good enough.
You can go T-shirts for your clinics, right?
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. All right, so the last question we always ask everybody, and we've gotten some great answers so far, is we have a random word generator, and we set it to 2 words, and you have to name a celebrity, a friend, a teammate, a coach, somebody, the first thing that pops into the top of your head when you hear the 2 words. All right, ready?
Yeah.
All right. Aquatic astronaut.
Alex Oss, because her initials are AA.
Oh,
you're quicker.
that was
You've been the quickest response.
We've had to hit a couple for some of the coaches. They're like, I have no idea. Do another one.
That's funny. That's good.
Okay, so I think that's it. We wrapped it up. Why don't you plug some of your social media and your camps and where they could find you on your YouTube and your website and all that stuff so people can check you out.
All right, so basically everything that anyone wants to find is on my website, TaylorCummingsLacrosse.com. Has links to my YouTube page, to my Facebook page, my Instagram, my Twitter. Also is home to my store where you can grab all my gear, my blog, which doesn't get updated frequently. I'm trying to get better at. But most importantly, all the registration for my camps and clinics. So Taylor Cummings Lacrosse is home to everything you need to know Taylor Cummings Lacrosse-wise.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We had a blast having you, and we'll definitely keep in touch. You'll be our go-to for the women's game, that's for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Taylor, and best of luck this summer.
Thanks a lot to Taylor Cummings. That was an awesome interview, and best of luck this summer in the World Games. I know we'll definitely be watching Team America over here at Piscataway Podcast. Speaking of Piscataway Podcast, Brooksy has a little announcement to make.
I got a freebie.
What does that mean?
I got a Warrior Royal Blue Evo 4 brand spanking new. And I'm trying to think of somebody who wants it, but I don't know how to get it out. Gary.
Ooh. Thanks for calling on me. So I have an idea. So go on to our social media on Instagram, Piscataway Podcast. And we're going to have a post up with a picture of a royal blue Evo 4 stick. And I want you to like it. I want you to tag 3 friends. Mm-hmm. And I want you to then tag someone you want us to have on the show. Mm-hmm. We're filling up our guest list pretty quickly. And we want to know who you guys want us to have on. So go ahead and do that. We'll pick a winner. We'll pick a winner on, what do you want to do, next Wednesday?
No, let's go a Freebie Friday.
Freebie Friday. Love it.
Yeah.
So we'll do it on Friday.
We'll post it, and we'll announce the winner.
We'll announce the winner, and we'll get your address through a DM, and we'll ship it on out. Ring, 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 ring. So because we're recording this so late, we actually can't call anybody to do a random fact. But we did find randomfactgenerator.net, and we're going to go ahead and use random facts from this website for this episode. And just an alert, the last time that we tried to do a dry run here 10 seconds ago, they came out super aggressive.
Yes.
So be forewarned.
This might not be PG.
All right. Are we ready? Go ahead.
There was no punctuation until the 15th century.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. More steel in the United States is used to make bottle caps than to manufacture automobile bodies. Wow, that's a fun fact.
Interesting.
Good to know.
Did you know 68% of Hostess Twinkies is air?
I feel like I'm being ripped off.
Dude, definitely getting ripped off.
Well, those were our fun facts of the week, and I'll be honest, no offense, Mark, but those are pretty good.
Mark, you got some stiff competition over here, bud.
You know he's going to go to this website next week.
Thanks for tuning in to episode 5. We'll see you back next Wednesday. Peace out, Girl Scout.
Whoop, whoop.